So, the theme of today's sutra discussion is Majjhima Nikaya number 4, which means the fourth discourse in the middle length discourses. These discourses are middle length in their length, in lengthwise. So this is the fourth one of those. But there are really long ones, longer than the long discourses as well sometimes. And the name, the title of it is Bhaya Bherava Sutta, which means the discourse on fear and dread. So most people, as they look at this title, they think that this will help them with fear and anxiety, these feelings. The focus on the sutra is not exactly that, but we can go into, look into those other areas as well. The focus on the sutra is to discuss about how one may encounter fear if someone were to live in the forest without their senses restrained, and this will put them in trouble. Whereas in the case of the Buddha, he had his senses restrained, so he was able to live in the forest, and he knew how to deal with, before his awakening, he knew how to deal with the feelings of fear when they arose in him. So we are going to also study the path that is described in the sutra, and that is also the path that you will be following in your deep meditation experiences. Okay? Thus have I heard. This is Venerable Ananda, the attendant of the Buddha, saying, on one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then the Brahmin Janusoni, this is the name, went to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. So Janusoni is, according to the commentary, Janusoni is not a name given by parents. It's a name given by the king, because Janusoni was the advisor to the king. So after he visited the Buddha, he exchanged greetings with the Buddha. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said, Master Gautama, when clansmen have gone forth from the home life into homelessness out of faith in Master Gautama, do they have Master Gautama for their leader, their helper, and their guide? And do these people follow the example of Master Gautama? This was his question. Like you come to the temple and you meet the monks and you ask questions. The Buddha says, that is so, Brahmin. Brahmin means he belonged to the Brahmin caste. So the Buddha addressed him by that name, the caste name. That's one of the higher classes, or the highest one. When clansmen have gone forth from the home life into homelessness out of faith in me, they have me for their leader, their helper, and their guide. And these people follow my example. And then Janusoni asks again, but Master Gautama, remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. Seclusion is hard to practice, and it is hard to enjoy solitude. One would think the jungle must rob a bhikkhu of his mind if he has no concentration. This is Janusoni saying. Last night, I walked out from the door and walked around. It was really dark. This was around 11:45 at night. I just needed some exercise. And I didn't have to live in the forest just to feel this This is a town area, right? But still at night, you feel not really comfortable being outside, because we don't see the things around as we do during the daytime. We are just suspicious about everything we see. Um, so when we see something that is moving, if it is dangerous, if the mind tells that it is dangerous, we have the urge to run away from it, find the direction to go for safety. So imagine living in the forest, secluded, alone, nobody to help, no one around, and you hear the birds screaming and animal sounds, and just the silence alone can scare somebody. If you have that experience, this doesn't have to be night, even during the daytime. Going to a thick forest can scare you, right? So the Buddha is now saying his own experience. This is the nature of a good teacher, to tell his own experience. The Buddha says, before my enlightenment, before he became the Buddha, in this present life, while I was still only an unenlightened being, I too considered thus. Remote jungle, thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. The jungles must rob a bhikkhu of his mind if he has no concentration. I considered thus, whenever recluses or Brahmins, unpurified in bodily conduct, resort to remote jungle, thicket resting places in the forest, then owing to the defect of their unpurified bodily conduct, these good recluses and Brahmins evoke unwholesome fear and dread. But I do not resort to remote jungle, thicket resting places in the forest unpurified in bodily conduct. This is the Buddha saying his bodily conduct is pure. I am purified in bodily conduct. I resort to remote jungle, thicket resting places in the forest as one of the noble ones, with bodily conduct purified. Seeing in myself this purity of bodily conduct, I found great solace in dwelling in the forest, as he was not interested in living in urbanized areas. And also his mindset was speaking into silence mostly, and he needed to be secluded. So he found the best place to be for himself was remote jungles. And then there is a list of things that people who have fear and dread experience. Whenever other folks who are covetous and full of lust, they have fear and dread, the Buddha then says, I am uncovetous and free of lust, so he does not have the fear and dread. And then those people with the mind of ill will and intentions of hate, then the Buddha says, I have mind of loving kindness, even for the spirits around him. And then the Buddha says, those who have overcome by sloth and torpor, those who have sloth and torpor, because they are sleepy and they get frightened seeing anything. And the Buddha says, I am without sloth and torpor. And then those who are with restless and unpeaceful in mind. And the Buddha says, I have a peaceful mind. And then those who are uncertain and doubting. And the Buddha says, I have gone beyond doubt. And then those who have given to self-praise and disparagement of others. The Buddha says, I am not given to self-praise and disparagement of others. The Buddha says, those who are subject to alarm and terror. And the Buddha says, I am free from trepidation. And and those who are desirous of gain, honor, and renown. The Buddha says, I have only few wishes. Those who are lazy and wanting in energy, lacking energy. The Buddha says, I am energetic. Those who are unmindful and not fully aware. The Buddha says, I am established in mindfulness. And those who go to forest unconcentrated and with straying minds. The Buddha says, I am possessed of concentration. Then the Buddha says, I consider thus, whenever recluses or Brahmins devoid of wisdom resort to remote jungle, thicket resting places in the forest, then, owing to the defect of their being devoid of wisdom and drivelers, these good recluses, even though they are good, recluses evoke unwholesome fear and dread that hinders their practice. But I do not resort to these places, jungle, thicket places, devoid of wisdom. I am possessed of wisdom. I resort to remote jungle, thicket, resting places in the forest with wisdom. Seeing in myself this possession of wisdom, I found great solace in dwelling in the forest. Then this is how he describes really dark nights. I consider thus, there are the specially auspicious nights of the 14th, the 15th, and the 8th of the night. In Sri Lanka, we say these are Amavaka nights, really dark nights. Now, what if on such nights as these I were to dwell in such horrifying abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines, and tree shrines? Perhaps I might encounter that fear and dread. And later, on such specially auspicious nights, as I was dwelling in horrifying abodes, in woodland shrines and tree shrines, a wild animal would come up to me, or a peacock would knock off a branch, or the wind would rustle the leaves. I thought, what now, if this is the fear and dread coming? I thought, why do I dwell always expecting fear and dread? What if I subdue that fear and dread while keeping the same posture that I am in when it came upon me? So if he was walking, he would just stop there and he would just look around, not run away, not allow the fear and dread to come, just observe what is happening until he found out that it is a tree branch or something that he didn't have to have fear on. Most people tend to have thoughts of fear, and then those thoughts increase their fear more than the actual sound of fear. So they get even more frightened, and they want to run away from the place. They cannot be there in a peaceful mindset. So this is what the Buddha did was to just stay there. If he was sitting, he would just not move. He would stay there and observe what is happening. And of course, he would not, if a dangerous animal was approaching to him, he would make sure he has safety around him. But other times, mostly if his mind was playing tricks, he wouldn't run away. He would just investigate, stop, and then continue his meditation. So then he goes on to talk about how some people who practice deep meditations, who have the ability to see daytime at night and nighttime during the day, some people have these abilities in meditation. They can perceive the daytime during the night and nighttime during the day. So the Buddha is talking about those people. some recluses and Brahmins who perceive day when it is night and night when it is day, I say that on their part this is an abiding in delusion. But I perceive night when it is night and day when it is day. Rightly speaking, were it to be said of anyone, a being not subject to delusion has appeared in the world for the welfare and happiness of many, this is about the Buddha, out of compassion for the world, for the good, welfare and happiness of gods and humans. It is of me indeed that, rightly speaking, this should be said. So, having seen that resolution in his mind, tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness was established. My body was tranquil and untroubled. My mind concentrated and unified, became collected. So then, so I went to the commentary to find out the discussion about day and night. There are some nights, those days, even now, that it rains continuously, and usually living in the forest, in thick jungle, thick places, in those days when it rains continuously, people find it hard to determine whether it's the daytime or the nighttime, especially in misty places when it's covered by mist. There's no sun to be seen. There are places like that in everywhere. So people get deluded and also get depressed. It happens here in the winter time. There are equipments made, like electronic equipments, like suns, and you plug it and then you have the feeling of having sun on your face. So that helps. It's even harder for people who are not used to it. For Asians, like I had a Nepali friend he was one of my roommates, so he bought one of those. He got depressed when it was really dark in the winter, and that thing helped. Sometimes there is a term like Sattaha Vaddalika, that it rains continuously for 7 days, and even birds get confused. So when it is that dark, birds start to make sounds, they cry, thinking that it is, so they are confused even in the midnight, thinking that it's the daytime. Or when it rains, because of the sounds, they start to scream. And sometimes when it's really bright moon, birds get confused, also animals get confused, thinking that it's the daytime. So they start to wander around like they do during the actual daytimes. So these confused monks are living in the forest. They think the daytime has come, because at those days they didn't have a wristwatch. Even nowadays, monks are not allowed to keep a wristwatch. It's not, but there are things like we have those clocks, and nowadays every monk usually has a little clock, because that helps him to find the time. But those days they didn't have anything, so someone had to find the time according to how the sun turns and then hit the gong. And if the monk was living alone, nobody will signal him and he may miss the time for meals, because according to the rules there was only the morning time was allowed for monks to go on alms round and collect foods, and it's a wrongdoing if the monk went during the afternoon to collect foods. For 20 years this was not practiced. In the first 20 years that monks went any time. But one woman got frightened seeing a monk standing by her doorstep. She thought it was a ghost, so she threw dirty water on the face of the monk. And when this was reported to the Buddha said, "Go during the daytime." And this became a rule, and it never changed. So nowadays in Buddhist countries, monks who have received full ordination go only go on alms round during the daytime. And in Burma, I saw there are Maichis or Tilachins, I don't know which one of the two. They are nuns. They are not fully ordained, but they live like monastics, and they go collecting raw material any time of the day. So, things have changed. But those days, monks got confused when they delusionally perceived day as night and night as day. So, this confused them. But as the Buddha was freed with these delusory states of the mind, he's going to explain about the deep levels of can we turn that off? Oh, okay. So the Buddha said here that tireless energy was around in me, that he didn't feel tired. Sometimes people have this, people say that I'm very tired, I'm busy, I don't have the time for meditation. And but you can still sit, and this tired feeling disappears. And those who say busy, there is a saying that those who are not busy should meditate 1 hour a day. Those who are busy should meditate 2 hours a day. This is because when you are really busy, that's when you really need energy from meditation. So when the tireless energy aroused in him, the Buddha says, quite secluded from sensual pleasures. Sensual pleasures come from seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, physical sensations, and thinking. So he was secluded from those, and secluded from unwholesome states, which are the 5 hindrances. Kama chanda, the desire for, or sensual desires, the lust. Vyapada, anger. Tina midda, sloth and torpor. Vichikicha, the doubt. And uddhacha kukucha, the restlessness. So secluded from those unwholesome states. The Buddha says, I entered upon and abided in the first jhana. Abiding, it was a way of abiding, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. So he's secluded, quite secluded from these mental states as well. So there's rapture and pleasure born out of that seclusion. So he dwelt in it. And then he goes to another state with the fading away as well of rapture, because rapture the joy doesn't stay forever, it just fades away. I abided, no, this is the second one. So the first jhana I explained, there is pleasure born out of seclusion. Then he went to the second state with the stilling of applied and sustained thought. There is stillness, completely stilling the thoughts. I entered upon and abided in the second jhana, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind, without applied and sustained thought, but with rapture and pleasure born of concentration. So there is rapture and pleasure born of concentration. Then he goes to another state. With the fading away as well of rapture, I abided in equanimity and mindful and fully aware, still feeling pleasure with the body. There is pleasure with the body, but that strong joy has now subsided. I entered upon and abided in the third jhana, on account of which noble ones announce. So whoever abides in that state, so noble ones usually say, he has a pleasant abiding, who has equanimity and is mindful. This is really the praise for noble ones who abide in the third jhana. So he goes to the fourth one, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief. So this is previously disappeared. as the unwholesome states disappeared. I entered upon and abided in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. So there's even a stronger level of equanimity in that state. Now going to uh, four more levels of states of mind. When my concentrated mind was thus purified, bright and unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, so it can do anything, I directed it to knowledge of. So this is not the four more states, not the four attainments. This is about different skills that you can develop as you come to this purity of the mind. The Buddha says he directed his mind to knowledge of the recollection of past lives. I recollected my manifold past lives, that is, one birth, two births, three births, four births, five births, 10 births, 20 births, 30 births, 40 births, 50 births, 100 births, 1,000 births, 100,000 births, many eons of world contraction, many eons of world expansion, many eons of world contraction and expansion. So the word eon here, kalpa, is an innumerable amount of time. So he was going into details in these lives. There I was so named, of such a clan with such an appearance, such was my nutriment, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my life term, and passing away from there I reappeared elsewhere, and there too I had that name, I belonged to that clan, and then I looked like this, and I ate those kind of things, and I experienced this kind of pleasure and this kind of pain, and I lived these many years, and passing away from there I reappeared in a different place. Thus, with their aspects and particulars, I recollected my manifold past lives. So this was the first knowledge attained by me in the first watch of the night. This is the night of his awakening. Ignorance was banished and true knowledge arose. Darkness was banished and light arose, as happens in one who abides diligent, ardent, and resolute. When my concentrated mind was thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings. With the divine eye, which is purified and surpassed the human, I saw beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate. I understood how beings pass on according to their actions. Thus, these worthy beings who were ill conducted in body, speech, and mind, revilers of noble ones, wrong in their views, giving effect to wrong view in their actions, on the dissolution of the body after death, have reappeared in a state of deprivation, in a bad destination, even in hell. But these worthy beings who were well conducted in body, like those other ones, speech and mind, not revilers of noble ones, right in their. So revilers of noble ones here means to if you find that someone has attained a noble state or has that as a claim, you don't condemn them. You don't say that that is not possible, or you don't discourage them. You just let them say whatever they say, you mind on your own practice. Giving effect to the right view in their actions. So when they die, after death, they reappeared in good destination because their mind state is good, even in the heavenly world. Thus, with the divine eye, which is purified and surpassed the human, I saw beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and I understood how beings pass on according to their actions. So we are coming to the end now. This was just three more passages, about four to go. This was the second true knowledge attained by me in the middle watch of the night of the awakening. Ignorance was banished and true knowledge arose. So he's repeating that again. Darkness was banished and light arose, as happens in one who abides diligent, ardent, and resolute. And again, when his mind was thus purified, he directed it to knowledge of the destruction of the defilements. So he hasn't done that until this point. I directly knew, as it actually is, this is how suffering arises. I directly knew this is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering, and knew this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So these are the Four Noble Truths. This is how he came to know about this. So then he's the Buddha. Until that point he didn't realize these things. So realization is another term for the term Buddha. So he has now awakened. He was sleeping and now awakened into these four truths. This is why we call him the awakened one. He has come to realize these truths. When I knew and saw thus, my mind was liberated from the taint of sensual desire, from also the taint of existence, and the defilement of ignorance, or the taint of ignorance. So he was freed from these. When my mind was thus liberated, the knowledge came that my mind was liberated, the Buddha says. I directly knew that birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. Katan karniya, in Buddha's words. There is no more coming to any state of being. This was the third true knowledge attained by me in the last watch of the night. Ignorance banished, true knowledge arose, darkness was banished, light arose, as happens in one who abides diligent, ardent, and resolute. Now, it might be that you think, perhaps, the recluse Gautama is not free from lust, hate, and delusion even today, the Buddha says. Which is why he still resorts to remote. So this answers the question, like, if he's the Buddha, why he still has to go to the forest to meditate? So the Buddha says, maybe he's not freed from lust, hatred, and delusion, which is why the Buddha resorts to remote jungle, thicket, resting places in the forest. The Buddha says, but you should not think that way. It is because I see two benefits that I still resort to remote jungle, thicket, resting places in the forest. I see a pleasant abiding for myself here and now, and I have compassion for future generations, which is why he goes to those places. And then Janusoni now says, indeed, it is because Master Gautama is an accomplished one, a fully enlightened one, that he has compassion for future generations. Magnificent Master Gautama, magnificent Master Gautama. Master Gautama has made the Dhamma, or the teachings, clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown. So this is like that. Revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master Gautama for refuge, and to the Dhamma, means the teachings, and to the Sangha, the monks of bhikkhus, for refuge. From today, let Master Gautama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. So usually at the end of many discourses, we find this statement that whoever was listening to the Buddha says that I follow, take me as your student. And this is a declaration that I have become a follower of the Buddha. And if they went to, some folks went to many teachers and say, take me as your student. And most people are seekers, not believers. They seek truth. So they seek truth, and nowadays we find more believers than seekers, right? Many people are born to some religion, so they take it, learn it from the grandparents or from schools or places, and they become believers and they stop seeking. Some people don't get into that mindset. They wander around and question and ask from different people, and they don't just accept just because somebody else said. They question the Buddha, they question monks, and they question everything. And then if they feel like this is right, they put it into practice, and still they don't trust it until they come to the fruition of the practice. So then they have the full faith that this works. Nobody else can come and say that this is wrong, that you shouldn't do it, because you have seen the teachings in your own mind and you have seen it for yourself. So you are confident on what you did and what you do and what you will do with this realization. Okay, any questions? And again, those who ask questions will be born wise, the Buddha says. So I said we will talk about anxiety and depression. I think depression also goes with it. Usually anxiety is about being anxious on something that is yet to happen. Depression is usually about something that has happened, so that belongs to the past. You are depressed about an event that happened in the past, and it comes back to you, and about a loss of someone, and you go to a dark corner of your mind and you carry it everywhere you go. It comes back, and it's really hard to overcome that state of mind, and you start worrying about it, and you are not productive in that mind state because you are preoccupied with a certain mindset. So the advice of the Buddha is to live in the present, which is not the present moment as we discuss these days, because the moment you try to focus on the moment is gone. So it's best to be mindful of what you are doing right now. What we are doing now is to listen to this talk, so just be involved mentally with it. Or you can go home in your mind and wonder about what is there in the fridge for tonight's dinner. Easy, right? If you stay here and now in this space, in this Dhamma hall, it gives you freedom from the past and freedom from the future. So you are living here and now. You are content of what you are doing now. Your mind is not running to these other extremes of the past or of the future. And the Buddha really in one of his discourses says, Atita nanusochanti, don't worry about the past. Nappajappanti nagatam. Don't wander around or worry about, ponder around about what is yet to come. Nagata means what? Agata, what is yet to come. Pachupannena yapenti, live here and now. Tena vannu pasidati, then you become beautiful. Because by looking at a person who is living here and now, you can tell that that person's face is not too long. Sometimes we say long-faced people. you know, they get irritated easily because they have something in their mind. Uh, you call someone in a peaceful mindset and you're just asking a simple question, and that person is easily irritated, and you then realize that it's not your fault, that it's the fault is their mindset that made them irritated. So you will wait until that mindset has passed so you can ask that question again and get the answer that you want. Sometimes we react to those people. That means we are giving power to that mind state. Reaction gives power. Um, like the story of you react to your own thoughts as well sometimes. When anxiety has come, you start to focus on that self-awareness. Too much self-aware of that state of mind instead of focusing on what you are supposed to be doing. Well, this is easier said than done, I say. As a person who has been dealing with a lot of anxiety in life, I thought I am the worst person who had anxiety in life. But it took years of experience to overcome this. It doesn't come in one night. And then you start researching on anxiety. And you now collect too much knowledge about anxiety. That also becomes a disturbance to you. Like I think I shared with you that one time I was researching too much about plane crashes. So it was difficult for me to be on planes. Like even a little alarm sounds as the plane was descending, I thought that was a warning for passengers, when in fact it was not a warning, it was just how planes land. So I would look around frightened, and I would think to myself, I will never fly again. But then I had to do it again and again. So I stopped looking into these things that produced that aroused anxiety in me. So those things then, so my mind stopped conditioning into those states. So I think brain plasticity has something to do with this. Like the brain learns what the mind feeds, or what the neurons feed. You may have heard the term that scientists always say, neurons that fire together, wire together. So this is the nature of the brain, that it wire together, and then it has this, it makes information readily available to you about, there's this sector or the section about anxiety. Whenever you want to pull data from it, it's readily available. But then it's not a wholesome state. So cultivating wholesome states of right kind of mindfulness, not the wrong mindfulness. You can be mindful on anxiety, that's the wrong kind of mindfulness. So to focus on loving kindness, or focus on something external, so you don't get focusing on some relaxation techniques, will help you to stay away from that anxiety. And focusing on being productive. Like if you are a public speaker, you can prepare for the speech. So you know how to begin it, you time it, you know how to joke about the topic, or how to say something about it, and then you continue, and you have all the material with you, not too much, not too little, and then you know how to end the talk. They say if you have to prepare for a talk for 1 hour, you will prepare about 1 day. If you have to prepare for a talk for 30 minutes, you will prepare 2 days. If it is 1 minute talk, you have to prepare for 1 month. Because you really have to know what to say. You really have to know what best should be spoken in front of the audience. And when we focus on these things, that helps you to focus on the right kind of things. So you are prepared, self-confident, and you are ready to make mistakes. Before anything, you don't judge yourself. Whenever you judge, So somebody says you are a donkey. You remember that example? You don't think about it many times. Do I have a tail like a donkey? So that's one time saying donkey to yourself. Do I eat grass like a donkey? That's the second time you're saying yourself a donkey to yourself. So you keep doing this, like, I am the person who made that mistake. So that defines yourself. Keep yourself undefined. This is anatta, no self. So why do you need to define it? If you are the boss of some place, don't define yourself as the boss. Just be an ordinary human being like others. So you are equal. You are not superior or inferior. You become superior or inferior by actions you do, how you speak. If you are just an ordinary person like other people, you don't judge others, and that makes a nice environment for you to be around. If you find mistakes of others, you use the sandwich method, like Ajahn Baham says. You praise the person first and then put a little something in there, like you have done really good work, and then you say, maybe you can also change this format to this, and then you cover the sandwich by praising the person again. I want you to work for me, and you are a nice person. So that method really, you can see how the mindset of people change around these methods, to become a person who is easy to be around, not easily irritated. As we found in the sutra, ill will, having strong desires, anger, and so all these unwholesome states arouse more unwholesome states and fear and dread in us. When we keep ourselves undefined from these states, freed from these states, who do we fear about, or what do we fear about? There's nothing. So we go to places, there's no fear. Go in front of people, there is no fear. Or if there is fear coming, you know that this is not permanent. This too shall pass. So the problem is we think that this is a permanent state, and we judge ourselves, and we feel really depressed, and but this definitely passes away. So in 2 weeks you will be dancing somewhere and happy and joyful. Anyway, questions?
Yes, and you said that don't mindful about anxiety. So can you practice mindfulness about anxiety and get out of that?
No.
No, that means you analyze why I'm anxious, and then you analyze it and you find there is no reason.
Well, that is analyzing anxiety.
Yeah,
that's not being mindful on anxiety.
Yeah, that is practicing mindfulness on anxiety, isn't it?
But that may, I see what you are saying, that you can, it has helped me, and I think it definitely helps others, to see how you touch this experience in mind. So this feeling arises in the body, or the thought arises in the mind. So whether it's in the body or the thought, wherever you first catch it, you can look at it as an external stimuli that arose, and now it's your mind that is noticing it because you are conscious on it. So this consciousness arises, and now that has arisen, then you can also be conscious on this sound. So that other consciousness disappeared, and this, you are conscious on this thing. You can see that other consciousness disappeared, so it was not a permanent thing. It disappeared, and this arose. So you can see how these states are not really permanent. In a matter of a split of a second, it disappears. So when you analyze these states that way, as impermanent, not yours, you never say something that arises, passes away as yours, and they disappear. So you don't find you in there. Who is you in here? Whether is it this heart? You know that this heart was born when you were born. You know it dies when you die. It's not you. So this feeling arose based on the conditions. It's not you. They disappear. So you don't really define yourself with that too. This analyzing, like another way to analyze a form is, so you see this lamp using through your eyes, and the reflection comes when you are conscious on it. Other times you can be looking everywhere, but you may not notice anything but be thinking in your mind, right? So because we have this sense organ of seeing, we become conscious on things, and that's just a knowledge that that's the only way that these things arise. And you close your eyes, that sight has gone, and that is how impermanent those sights are. So that's very similar to the feeling of anxiety as well. They disappear. Your question?
A Buddhist person's diet, is it vegan or vegetarian?
Neither.
Neither?
It's anything that is offered to that person, or anything that person can find to eat. So when I became a monk, until I became a monk, I was a vegetarian. So, and as I went on alms round, sometimes I remember people offering just rice and a fried egg. So I had to go and eat that. That's for my survival for that day. The Buddha never made it a rule. Even his cousin, no, the brother-in-law asked the Buddha to make it a rule that all monks should be permanently vegetarian. Buddha didn't accept this because even now, if a monk were to go to forest places in Myanmar or Thailand, sometimes what you are offered is a boiled frog or something like that. So, and monks don't, if they follow the strict rules, they don't really keep any dry food. They don't cook themselves, so they only have to depend on what is offered. But if the Buddha made a rule that they should only be eating vegan and vegetarian food, these monks will have no food for many, many days, because poor people in those areas can only afford to offer a bit of rice and a boiled frog or something. So,
But if I become a Buddhist
mm-hmm.
and I have choices,
Yeah.
Is it wrong to eat certain things?
The Buddha, well, it's I wouldn't say it's wrong. If you didn't, so for monks, this is how the Buddha. So he made 3 rules: Aditta, Sutta, Aparisankita. If you didn't see that this animal was killed specially for you, if you didn't hear that, or if you don't have doubts that this animal was killed for you, especially for you, then you can eat that food. But Buddha encouraged, out of compassion, he encouraged people to, I think, be compassionate on animals and other beings. And in doing that, although he never made a statement that everybody should be vegetarian, and I don't know whether he ate meat or not, but I myself prepare vegetarian food, and people, as they serve food, they bring fish. I cover my fish or meat, I cover the bowl, so because there are other food that I can eat. And I grew up in a vegan family. My dad was a vegan person, so my tongue is not used to eating meat products. So it's more less of a virtue. It's just I'm not used to eating those things, and then it became a virtue later as I understood benefits of it. That I feel light, I feel good, I feel really different when I don't eat meat.
Well, what if a spider or a bee came in here? Would it be wrong for you to kill it, or you just try to get it out?
We try to get it out. and you will experience this more in Sri Lanka. Cannot go from one place to another with you will see mosquitoes, about hundreds of thousands of those following you because they get attracted to the blood. Here it's a blessing that you don't have those in certain parts of this country, but there are other kind of bugs coming. So it becomes so I think most people who practice in Sri Lanka stop killing mosquitoes. And they say this, that I stopped this 10 years ago. Now when a fly comes, they have a net. They catch the fly and throw it away. I think you have those in Amazon, fly catching nets, so you don't kill the animal. But if you happen to step on one, you didn't have the intention of killing, so don't blame yourself for that accident. Like if you may, in your case, you stepped on the frog, you didn't have the intention of killing the frog, and it died, unfortunately. But out of love, you say, I wish you a good birth, be a human being, or be a better of whatever you want to be, and I'm sorry that I happened to step on you. So, and then I gave you an exercise to do afterwards. Yeah. Do you have cats at home?
I have a cat and a
Oh,
dog,
good.
so they're each getting it.
Nice. So, 1 minute. So let's finish.
May I ask one question, please?
Yeah.
The word anhata, is that how you pronounce it? Myself?
Anatta. Anatta.
Anhata.
Yeah. No self.
Thank you.
Yeah. We can talk about that maybe in the next discourse. The features of non-self. Non-self, anatta lakkana discourse. That will be a nice start for the next one. Or anatta lakkana, so discourse on no self characteristics, but I don't think that is in the middle length discourses. But Google, you will find it.